I want to talk to you about why your payment processor is really costing you so much. Okay, let's have a conversation about affordability. Let's have a conversation about accountability, but also efficiency. So here are the generalities I want you to pay attention to. So if you think about your payment processor, you have a you or I want you to think about a business that's engaged in making money, right? So, but the thing is, they cannot just engage in making money off of you like in a very crazy way. No, it has to be fair, it has to be justified, and it has to be scalable. Have you ever felt like you've fallen victim to a sales ploy, or felt like you overpaid for something that definitely wasn't worth it? It can be pretty unsettling when that cognitive dissonance settles in and you are left to deal with the fallout, right? I mean, like somebody took you for granted or took you for stupid, if you will. Okay, it's one of those things where you have to really understand that this is a similar sentiment that you have if you are thinking about how your payment processor is actually charging you or what kind of pricing shenanigans that the company has. Now, one thing for sure, when you think about your payment processor, the fees that they're charging you, those fees have to deal with the transactional volume you have, the industry you're in, but also the kind of contract you signed in the first place. I mean, that's one reason. That's one reason why before you sign a contract like a payment processing contract, you want to read the fine prints. If you have no idea what you're signing, then it's really it's not the processor's fault what's happening to you. You got to really have a clear idea what you're getting yourself into before signing a payment process, like signing a contract with a payment processor. And don't forget that sometimes they charge you ETFs if you want to get out of the contract. Let's say you don't like the clauses anymore and you want to get out. They'll charge you early termination fees, ETFs, and those ETFs can go from $300 all the way to $5,000 or even $10,000 depending on the clauses of the original contract. Okay, that's very important. Well, one thing for sure, if you want to really understand that why your payment processor is costing you too much, or if so, you got to really have a clear idea about the industry you're in, and also you got to collect some benchmarking intel to really find out how much they're charging or how much your rivals are being charged, because maybe they're not the processor your rivals are using, but at least you want to know how much your rivals are being charged. So when you think about why your payment processor is costing you so much, one culprit is the post-purchase blues in business owners in terms of the questionable tactics, in terms of transparency, in terms of frequency, but also in terms of how many fees they are really adding onto your statement, right? Because the thing is that if you have a payment processor charging you so much, you got to really ask yourself, what fees are they charging you, like for real? Like, what are the fees that they really charging you? And so you have a lot of fees. I mean, you have a lot of fees, but the whole idea here is that you want to make sure those fees are fair, those fees are justified, and those fees were actually explained to you from the get-go. Because the last thing you want is to actually be charged a fee that you have no idea about, right? So what are those fees? Let's talk about that. You have the setup fees, the cancellation fees, the PCI non-compliance fees, and a host of other things your payment processor can charge you for seemingly on a whim, okay? It's one of those things where you have to really ask yourself, is it fair? And most importantly, from a benchmarking point of view, you want to know what your rivals. I've said this before, but I want to repeat it. You want to know what your rivals are being charged, because if a payment processor is taking advantage of you and charging you crazily high prices, then you want to switch. You want to switch because if your competitors are getting a better treatment pricing wise from another payment processor, it's time to switch. Okay, but the thing is that everything goes back to the contract you originally signed. If you signed a contract where you had no idea what you signed, then it's up to you to stay in the contract until the expiration date, like 3 years or 5 years. And if you want to get out early, then you have to pay the ETFs that I spoke about a little earlier. Now, there is a possibility to actually negotiate those fees. There is a possibility to negotiate the fees, the penalties, or even how much overall your payment processor is actually charging you. Okay. Now it depends on a lot of things. It depends on the industry you're in. It depends on the kind of transactions you have, the volume of transactions. Maybe you have a pretty risky, like card present or card not present transactions, and so on and so forth. So besides the fees that you have, the setup fees, the cancellation fees, the PCI non-compliance fees, what about the pricing structure, the basic pricing structure? Because the whole thing is that you have those fees, but those fees are supplemental. Those fees are ancillary. You'll still have the basic pricing structure that you agreed on in your contract, okay? Let me talk to you first about traditional payment processor pricing. So most traditional payment processors use what's known as interchange differential pricing. Let me repeat, interchange differential pricing, which basically charges you as a merchant different fees per transaction based on which of those transactions are classified as qualified or non-qualified. So it's one of those things where you have to go back to your contract and also see what kind of classification you have. You are at least what did the merchant processor think of your transactions? Did they think that your transactions are qualified or non-qualified? Because everything will start from there. The pricing will start from there. The classification will start from there. Now, oftentimes, payment processors would quote merchants the qualified rate to actually persuade them into signing a contract. But what went unsaid is that very few transactions actually end up qualifying for this more attractive rate, and the business owner was left paying more than they ever anticipated for the majority of their customers' purchases. So this is why your payment processor will cost you too much, because when you actually sign the contract, you were thinking, well, I'm going to qualify for, I'm going to qualify for those quote unquote qualified statuses. But then you realize that you ended up in the unqualified zone. Okay. Now there is another way to fix this. You want to go back to the contract you originally signed, and you want to read the clauses, and then you want to go back to the category of transactions you have, the kind of card present, card not present, keyed in, not keyed in, whatever transactions you have, and see how you can streamline the whole operation. Sometimes this might involve a renegotiation of your processing fees, and that's totally possible. That's totally possible if you can contextualize the explanation to the payment processor. So besides the interchange differential pricing, you also have to remember that interchange differential pricing is kind of similar to another form of pricing called tiered pricing. Now, tiered pricing actually is pretty adaptable to certain industries, but not all. And also, tiered pricing is actually adaptable to certain demographics. So you got to really ask yourself, if you're a small business owner and you want to go for tiered pricing, you got to really ask yourself whether or not this is adaptable to your specific situation and how your customers pay. Okay. Unfortunately, tiered pricing has a few advantages for merchants besides being relatively easy to understand, and is widely regarded as an expensive and often unfair arrangement between merchant and provider. So maybe right now your payment processor is costing you too much because unfortunately you are actually labeled as a tiered pricing merchant. Big question is, why were you labeled that way in the first place? What kind of conversations you had at the beginning for the payment processor to label you as the tiered pricing merchant? And what kind of transactions do you currently have for you to be classified that way, okay, to be categorized that way? Because the whole thing here is that if you're categorized as a tiered pricing merchant, and you are being charged a crazily high amounts, then you just wasting money, okay? And what I want you to do is to go back to your contract. I want you to go back to your merchant statements, and I want you to look at the transactions you have for the last 3 months. And I want to really go granular here. You want to see the type of transactions you have, the amounts you have, and the frequency. Those three things should really inform you what kind of classification you should be in, okay? The frequency plays an important role because, see, the whole thing is that usually as a merchant, you want to close your transactions on a daily basis, not on a weekly basis, because this is how you can reduce fees. But the thing is, frequency will play an important role in terms of how the merchant is going to look at you from a risk perspective. And also, of course, I just hope that right now you don't have a lot of chargebacks, because chargebacks can also increase your overall bill. So if you think your payment processor is costing you too much, maybe it's because of the chargebacks. Let me talk about the fact that when you think about why your sorry about that, why your payment processor is costing you too much, basically this could be due to the structure of your contract. Okay, so another reason you might be paying more than you had initially hoped for your processing services is that the company may have inserted some unfortunate terms into your contract without you noticing. In other words, you read, but you had no idea what you were reading, or you didn't read at all, like you did not read the fine prints. Okay, so when a payment processor includes a specific rate within their terms that seems too good to be true, it very likely is too good to be true. It's one of those things where before, see, this goes back to what I said a little earlier, that you want to really read the contracts like in depth. You want to read the contract deeply to understand everything you're signing, everything before you put your signature, on the dotted lines. You want to make sure that you understand what you're writing, what you are signing for. Okay. Now, if a payment processor is inserting some terms, this doesn't mean that they are dishonest. It just means that they are just very shrewd, and it's up to you to understand what you're signing your life for. Okay, and so if you ever notice a fine print that reads something like plus applicable fees, I'm gonna put this on the screen so it's really clear to you. If you ever see this plus applicable fees, you really want to run away as far as possible. If you have plus applicable fees with no description of what those fees are or how much they could be, you should run as far away from that company as possible. I want you to run as Usain Bolt. Okay, I want you to really run as possible, because they'll start playing some pricing shenanigans on you, start charging you crazy amounts. And the thing is, they would have the right to do so because they did not actually specify what those applicable fees really are, and you agree to whatever they put, and so it's really the burden of proof is actually on you at that time, would be on you to actually prove that they were valid, they were complying with they're not complying with the law really. So I just explained to you why your payment processor is really costing you too much. Okay, so one thing for sure, when you are looking for, so you have interchange pricing, you have the pricing, you have the fees, you have those like the fees that I said to you a little earlier, but also the term plus applicable fees. Okay, but there is a better alternative when you really think about it. Your payment processor shouldn't cost you that much. Of course, there has to be a fair sort of a process whereby you are being charged for the service they render, but they shouldn't really take advantage of you. Now, imagine a payment processing company that is not trying to pull the wool over your eyes, but uses a transparent pricing model and partners with you to help your business grow. Okay, and that's what you want. You want to be really understand that basically this is totally possible. If you need one such payment provider, payment processing company, let us know in the comment section, and we'll certainly give you one based on your geography, based on your city and state, or based on your country, for that matter. Okay, you want to really have want to have a payment processor that really understands your business A to Z and is able to concoct for you a pricing tier that works for you. See, the thing is, when you really do things the proper way, you are able to have a win-win situation. You can have basically a payment processor that makes money off of you, but you also making money in the whole situation. And that's what you want, really. You want to have this sort of win-win situation on both side of the thing, on both side of the equation. Okay, so you also want to have, like, maybe you want to think about having an interchange plus pricing model. Okay, you want to have a pricing model that really is pretty scalable, but also pretty fair to you. Okay, now the interchange plus pricing model may seem complex at first glance, but this method of processing payments comes with no hidden cost and gives you the relationship you deserve to have with your service provider, really. Especially if you have a large transactional volume. If you have a large transactional volume from several geographies, having the interchange plus pricing model can really save you money over time. So, from a scalability point of view, this is a pretty good route to actually follow this year. So let me dig a little deeper here. So when you think about interchange plus pricing. You have to really understand that you have a pricing tier that understands that really takes your business into account, that takes your transactional value into account, but also is fair to you from a revenue perspective. Now, all card providers like Visa, MasterCard, Amex, or Discover charge a standard fee for every card transaction known as the interchange. However, these fees can change based on what type of card is being used by your customer and whether the transaction is being processed card present, in other words, in person, or card not present, for example, online. For example, a basic cashback Visa card may have a relatively low interchange fee, but something like an Avion card, which is considered a premium card, will typically be more expensive. So it's one of those things where you have to see. That's what I was telling you a little earlier when I said it depends on the types of transactions you process too. Now, how interchange plus pricing works for you as a merchant is that you get to see exactly what the interchange rate is for every transaction you process. Okay, so this is kind of cool. Now, you also want to make sure that you are able to have a provider that guarantees, not guarantees is a tough word, but that really assures you that the base interchange fees is not going to change, but will remain a set amount. Okay, so you also want to make sure that you are able to see a scaling or descaling pricing model. In other words, the fee only decreases, like the fee will decrease if you process more transactions. So you have an economy of scale here, and so you have discounts, you have rebates, you have rates, you have all kinds of discounts. I mean, all kinds of promotional reductions. One thing I want to say here is that if you notice that your payment processor is costing you too much, you want to start the conversation. You want to go back to the payment processor and start a conversation before actually switching to another provider and saying, I want interchange plus pricing. You want to start a conversation and really have somebody on the phone, but you want to be as granular as possible. You want to analyze your statement and really go to the payment processor with a lot of justification. You want to have proof of what you're saying, right? You have to have proof, and for them to really take you seriously, they have to see that you have done some homework in terms of granularity, in terms of comprehensiveness, in terms of accountability. So if they see that you have all the paperwork and they see that you are willing to renegotiate or even leave the current contract, if they can't listen to you, I bet they will listen to you. That's for sure. Because at the end of the day, they would rather just lose 10% or 15% of their revenue than lose it all, really, when you think about it. So in today's conversation, here's an epilogue. I spoke to you about why your payment processor is costing you too much. I give you the generalities, and now I really walk you through the end of the conversation through the epilogue. Thank you so much. God bless you. I see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.